All right, welcome in on a Saturday night here on the College Basketball Coast to Coast platforms. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. He is Jason Powers. We are back again with 2 spots claimed for the 2024 Men's Final Four. UConn, who else? In devastating fashion in Boston, and then all the way out on the opposite end of the continent. As Jason and I do the show, we're together in West Central Florida. All the way out in Los Angeles, way to the west. Alabama has gotten it done tonight over the Clemson Tigers, and they're in the Final Four for the first time. So the defending champs are back, and they'll meet a team that's never been in the Final Four before after they outlasted Clemson this evening. Jason, welcome in. We got 2 spots to go till tomorrow until we find out between Purdue and Tennessee and Duke and NC State, but we know 2 of them that are there. We've got guests that are joining us. Your thoughts as we begin things this evening on what we have seen in Boston and LA.
30-0 run and 104 second half points.
So wait, it's not the same game.
Right.
The 30-0 run is in the Connecticut blowout of Illinois, which was shocking enough. And then an Alabama-Clemson game that just turned into a typical what we've seen from Alabama score fest, and you are going to get smoked more than likely if you're playing them at their pace with 3-point bombing going on.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, Clemson was in the game. It was, they were down 3 at the half, low score. It was mid-30 game, 35-32, I believe. And Clemson, as enticing as it is that you make shots, that just fuels up and gasses up that Alabama offense and that tempo, and they just got to the point where you're not going to beat them in a track meet. You're just not going to beat them in a track meet. You've got bigger players, post players. You don't have the offensive firepower on the perimeter to keep up.
Well, and the bottom line here is that Alabama knows how to play that way, and even though some SEC teams got them, until you go against that and face that, and North Carolina found it out late in the game, and now Clemson, back-to-back ACC opponents, found it out. This is how they want to play. They want 70 possessions. They want to launch 35 or 43 pointers because they believe they're going to make 10, 15, 17 of them. And Mark Sears, how about he started the game 0 of 6 from the floor, and at last check had made 7 of 8 and made like 5 3-pointers, much of that in the second half. And Alabama, again, gets to the finish line in the West Regional. Incredible job for Nate Oates to put Alabama in the first Final Four ever in program history against the defending champs. What a matchup this is going to be.
How about the storyline of last year? Alabama was the number 1 overall seed. Everybody thought they were getting to the Final Four, and Connecticut comes out of nowhere to get to the Final Four and win it all. And this year, it's completely reversed. Everybody thought Bama was going to be a potentially one-and-done scenario. They struggled down the stretch. Connecticut was the number 1 overall seed. They get to the Final Four, and Alabama, their first time ever, not miracle run, but just a great run. They go west, and as our boy Chris Stewart's going to get to spend a 3rd consecutive weekend on the West Coast out in Phoenix.
Yes, it is amazing what the Tide have done. They did not win the SEC in the regular season. They did not win the SEC tournament. They went out in the SEC tournament at the hands of Florida. But, man, they have put it together now in this one. And, again, they'll meet Connecticut. So let me set the table for you. Thank you for finding us. We're live on the social media platforms of College Basketball Coast to Coast on YouTube, Twitter feed, CBB Coast to Coast with the number 2, CBB Coast to Coast with the number 2. Also on Facebook as well. If you are only hearing us on the replay in podcast form, it's a live video show when we go live like this. But find the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast feed and also on TuneIn. There are a lot of you engaging with the TuneIn live channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast, and hearing our stuff. We'll be live at the Final Four with UConn, Alabama, and 2 more teams coming this weekend from Glendale, Arizona, and State Farm Stadium, the home of the Arizona Cardinals. It's the home of the men's Final Four for this weekend. We will be there. Coming up in a moment, you'll hear from Adam Zagoria. He was there courtside as UConn. Jason, they were in a tough battle with Illinois. The game was low scoring in the low 20s. After a tough start for Illinois, they had gotten the game back tied. And then, my Lord, they dropped a piano on Illinois from about a 5-story building after that. So we'll talk to Adam about that, but give me a thought or two on that run at the end of the first half and the start of the second half where UConn tore them apart.
The game was tied 23-23. And the next time Illinois scored, it was 53-23, 30-0. I don't think I've ever seen in a college game, especially in a tournament game, I don't think I've ever seen a 30-0 run at the college level.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that I've seen that either with something like that, where again the run was 30 straight points. It eventually got up to like 35-2, and the game was just over. You felt bad for the Illini, but they didn't really do it with 3-point shots. They didn't make that many 3-pointers. They didn't have to have it. They were driving to the basket. They were getting the ball to Klingon just over and over again. Fast break, etc.
Illinois had 25 points with 10 minutes to go in the game. 25 points.
Yeah.
And they established Klingon early. I think he got the first 5 out of the first 7 points of the game. The size mismatch was just clear. They were just, and the defensive pressure that they put on Terrence Shannon and the ability to keep him out of the lane, keep him from going off was obviously the catalyst there on that run. But boy, give Danny Hurley credit. He talked a lot of noise. He's talked a lot of bravado the last week or so, and they backed it up. Give him credit.
No doubt that they did. Again, it ends up on the final score 77-52. While we have a moment here, Jason, let's hear from our analyst, our insider, Adam Zagoria of NJ.com and also his zagsblog.com. He was there in the TD Garden Arena at courtside press row watching all of this unfold. A little while ago, I talked to him this evening about what he saw and most importantly, who's beating these guys. I mean, that's the real thing, Jay. I mean, you hate to say that, but if they keep playing this way, who is going to take them out? Let's get Adam's thoughts right now after this bulldozing job for a second straight game. They got San Diego State 2 nights ago badly, did the same thing to Illinois. Let's go to that conversation right now here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Seriously, I feel like we're doing the same interview 2 nights later. All right, UConn's in the Final Four, and Adam, the same question. If this team looks like that going to Arizona, I don't know who beats them. That's me saying that. Go ahead. You were there firsthand.
Yeah, I mean, we're running out of superlatives for this team. They've won 4 games by, I think, 27.8 points. It's a 111-point differential in 4 games. They beat San Diego State, which got to the title game last year by 30, and now they just beat the Big Ten tournament champions by 25. The kind of funny story after the game was Dan Hurley going off on this guy, Sean Harrington, I guess is a former Illinois guard and ESPN analyst. Danny called his tweet asinine because Sean Harrington said Terrence Shannon would be the best player on the court, and UConn didn't have an answer for him. And, of course, Terrence Shannon was a complete non-factor in the game, shot 2 for 12 for 8 points. So I think Danny's a little bit like Michael Jordan in that he tries to manufacture these slights to motivate his team.
Well put on that. So this is where you give us great insight. This was a close game, and you were looking at it, and I was looking at it, and I think everybody watching was going, okay, is this the game where they get pushed, they get tested, and it's going to be a close game? And then it just became an avalanche. And as you're sitting there, at what point are you aware, late first half, early second half, they're going to do this to them again? And then it's like 28 points in a row into the first half, second half. What point are you trying to keep up with? Is that 20 in a row? Is that 24 in a row? It was crazy.
Yeah, I thought it was 25 straight.
Right.
I might have missed a couple there, but
I think it eventually got to literally like 33-2. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. It was 25-0, I think. But they started off in the second half. Klingon continued to be dominant and had a couple, I think 2 dunks and a reverse layup early in the second half. And then, Caravan started hitting a couple and Castle hit a couple. And then it just became, an avalanche that Illinois couldn't stop. And the game was over by about the 13-minute mark, I'd say, of the second half, which is kind of rare. It was like, 50-23. And I'm like, okay, this game's over. There's no way they're coming back. And, Donovan Klingon, you just can't say enough about this kid. I mean, 22, 10, They credited him with 5 blocks. I think he had more like 7 or 8 or 9, 3 steals. He was just a dominant force. On, it was one play where he blocked Quincy Guerrier on the defense, runs down, gets a 2-handed dunk over Terrence Shannon. And, it's a whole nother deal where he goes in the NBA, but it will be interesting to see what he's like in the NBA.
Voice of Adam Zagoria, if you're only hearing us either in podcast form after the fact or on TuneIn, if you're seeing us on the live channel, he's always so well dressed after these events in the suit coat. I'm Phil Collins. I got you. I'm Phil Collins. I'm no jacket required here on the program because you're a music guy. We're talking about the latest bashing by UConn, 77-52 over Illinois, an Illinois team that had won the Big Ten tournament, one of the best teams in the Big Ten, that had won, obviously, over Iowa State the other night just to get into the Elite Eight, a really good team, and the score was really not that close. Again, I guess the only question becomes, is there an overconfidence factor? Is there a game? And they began this game shooting poorly, UConn. But is there a game that they're about to play either in the semifinal or the championship game, overconfidence, bad shooting, foul trouble for Klingon, some combination where it becomes close? That seems to be the only recipe for how they don't win this thing again.
Yeah, I will say that, we don't know who's going to win this Alabama-Clemson game, but Alabama can put up 85, 90, 100 points on you. So Connecticut has played stifling defense. They completely shut down Terrence Shannon here. So, they're capable of shutting people down. But I suppose if they get in some type of, race, road running race with Alabama, that's whatever, 87, 82 or 95, 88. I suppose it's possible UConn could lose a game like that. But I don't think Alabama's seen defense that the way UConn plays or even Clemson for that matter. But, I think Danny said, look, these games aren't easy to win and things could go wrong, but a lot of things would have to go wrong. I mean,
that's right.
Klingon would have to get in foul trouble, and you'd have to have all these other guys, Spencer, Caravan, Castle, have tough shooting nights or not be able to score. I mean, they only got 4 points from Caravan and Cam Spencer in the first half tonight. Those guys weren't factors. They ended up with 21 combined, and they still won by 25. And
Newton, I think, missed like his first 8 shots or more, and they still hit another gear and just pulled away. I know we're going on and on about this, but they looked apart, and Adam was right there at the TD Garden in Boston to see the latest version. So the next time I talk to you again, we'll know UConn's opponent. At the time that we're doing the interview, we don't know that opponent. But I look forward to being with you in Arizona and see if we're about to get the first repeat in 17 years since the Florida 06-07 team. And we were around each other then. We've been doing this for a while. We were around each other in Atlanta then when it happened. Let's see if we're about to get it again. One thing is for sure, UConn's got the chance. They are there now at the Final Four. Let's see what happens. Final thought from you before we reconvene?
There's numbers, so many numbers, but they've won 10 straight NCAA tournament games, 10.
Yeah.
And they've won 25 of their last 26 games. The only team that beat them during that time was another Big East team, Creighton. But they're in the Final Four. They got a chance to do it. They're all incredibly motivated. Guys like Cam Spencer and Steph Castle don't have a ring, so they want to get their first one. The other guys want to get their second one, and it's going to be fun to watch. Could see history.
Will be. Adam Zagoria, great stuff. Thank you for being with us yet again tonight. We'll reconvene in Phoenix, my friend.
Poolside, baby.
All right, so Adam joined us earlier in the evening in the aftermath of the UConn win. We did not know the Alabama final at that point as I called Jason Powers back in. We now know it's the Tide that will be in the way of UConn. Kind of interesting symmetry just from this standpoint, if you know your college basketball history. The last time Alabama, Jason, was trying to get to the Final Four, the only other time they've been in the Elite Eight, 2004 West Regional, UConn beat them and denied them, and UConn went on with Jim Calhoun, Emeka Okafor and company to win the national title in San Antonio. I was there for that one, not there for the Alabama defeat. But now the Tide get to the Final Four, and who's in the way? UConn for Phoenix, but they'll take it. They'll take it with the way they played tonight to get in. You can't say enough about Nate Oates' team, which again came in as a 4 seed, had a real battle last Sunday night with Grand Canyon, losing with 5 minutes to go. Had to win that game, had to beat the number 1 seed North Carolina Thursday, and then overcome a hot Clemson team down the stretch in a 3-point shootout for a while down the stretch. Jason, another thought or two on that?
They were down 26-13 with about 6 minutes to go in the first half. So Clemson had the momentum. They had the tempo. They had the lead. Grant Nelson got 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes of the game. And then how about the Alabama bench players? How about Jaron Stevenson, 19 points off the bench, career high. And again, I was listening to the game on the radio in the early moments, second half. It was just a 3-point fest. I mean, both teams were, every possession.
There were 6 straight possessions, made 6 straight possessions. Each team made 3 of them.
Yep.
But again, as we touched on earlier, for those just joining us on the live video show, and we got another guest joining us in just a moment, you're playing Alabama's pace. You're playing their game. They have seduced you, lured you in. Play like we want to play, up and down, quick 3-point shots. And eventually they overpowered Clemson in the end and won the game by 7. I'm just looking at the final stat sheet. Alabama attempted 36 threes. That's around where the range that they want. Made 16 of them. Clemson 8 of 28, several of those late in the game.
Yep.
And again, for Alabama, they end up out rebounding Clemson 44-33.
Yep.
They had 20 assists on 29 made field goals. And Nate Oates, let's say something again about the job he's did. They were talking about this at the very end of the broadcast on TBS. Brian Anderson, Jim Jackson and company, this is well known. They had to replace 8 players off that team, including Brandon Miller, a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. He had to replace 3 of his assistants. 2 of them became head coaches.
Right.
So he reloaded with assistants and with players. They're in the Final Four, Jason.
Oh, no doubt. And the other part of the theme, this theme has been a theme throughout this tournament, free throw shooting. Clemson shoots 50% from the line. We've seen Auburn miss a bunch of free throws early. We've seen other teams disastrous that lost games in this tournament. Free throw shooting has been a major issue in this tournament with teams that have lost. Again, was Clemson going to win the game? Maybe not, but if you make 3 or 4 more of those free throws, instead of it being 6 or 7 at the end, you're down 2 or 3, and it's a 1-possession game.
That is the voice of Jason Powers. TJ Reeves with you. We're on the College Basketball Coast to Coast platforms. Again, if you're only hearing this in podcast form after the fact, know that we do this live on Saturday night. We'll be doing something live next Saturday night from the Final Four. We'll know the national champion matchup, the national championship matchup next Saturday night from Glendale, Arizona. So again, we're live on Twitter, Facebook, and also on YouTube as well here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. And why don't we do this? We've talked a lot about the UConn win and also the Alabama win. Let's talk some more about Sunday in the preview mode, where one of the Elite Eight games is Duke against NC State. That's the late game in the doubleheader in Dallas. The game we'll focus on now for a few moments is the one in Detroit. The 1 seed Purdue, the 2 seed is Tennessee. Somebody gets into the Final Four to join, as we know right now, UConn and Alabama. And Vince Ferrara, who does a great job on the Tennessee Vol flagship station 99.1, the Sports Animal, 99.1 FM in Knoxville, and the Vol Network. We love Vince's insight. He is live, staying up late with us in Detroit. Let's bring him aboard on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Tampa brother from another mother in the Motor City as we do this live. My friend, welcome. And let's let you get a reaction in before we preview Tennessee Purdue. You've seen a lot of Alabama the last couple of years. Tennessee beat that Alabama team late in the year in Tuscaloosa to clinch the SEC regular season title. So you've got great familiarity with the conference, with them. A thought or two on Alabama winning tonight in LA. Great moment for them. What a moment. And now they got to play Godzilla, UConn, after what we saw. Vince, a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, Tennessee beat them twice, actually, and that's not easy to do. The biggest difference for me with Alabama is how they're defending. That is the difference. Yes, they gave up in the 80s tonight, but they got to around where they often are at 89. When it was all said and done, they get hot from 3. I know there's pace of play. I know there's the 3-pointers, all that kind of stuff. They've had different guys rise up. Grant Nelson last game, Stevenson and Pringle in this game.
Mhm.
So when you have different guys elevating and having career games and you're defending, they were, for most of the year, they were in the hundreds in defensive efficiency. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't have a ton of faith in them for a deep run in the tournament, because those kind of teams that have one side of the ball that is not very efficient, they normally don't make or win the national championship. Kentucky, their stats were almost identical to Kentucky's. Kentucky went out right away. Alabama figured it out and got better defensively. And this also is a reminder, guys, that the NCAA tournament, each game is its own bubble. It's its own entity. You are your island. You can't rely on anything else that happened before that, or obviously look ahead. But people think, all right, look how well they're shooting and they're doing this and they're doing this. Yeah, when you're UConn, it's going to translate. There's certain things that will, but overall, the matchups are totally different. Sometimes the venues will be very different. The reactions of young people are going to be very different. The officiating is going to be very different game to game. So it's just another reminder that you got to kind of reset what you've already seen from those teams and just, try to project how it might play out when they play each other there. But very impressed with how Alabama's gotten on this run and gotten for their first ever Final Four.
I want to get your thoughts, obviously, why we have you here on Tennessee and Purdue. But one more quick thought on UConn. Do you buy, and it's rather obvious point, the way they are playing, I don't know out of Alabama, Duke, NC State, Purdue, Tennessee, who gets them if they keep playing at this high a level. I don't think – I didn't go to UConn. The Big East doesn't pay me to say that. I don't see it. What do you think?
I don't either. I guess if anybody could, it would be Purdue would be my guess, because now Carabin has a similar type of challenge there. He could get into foul trouble. I think there's a little bit of a drop off there in size after you get past him. That would be a different dynamic. In Purdue also, they don't shoot a bunch of threes, but they're as efficient as anyone in the country. So they would be maybe the one team that might be able to, if everything works out well and UConn is just completely off and spooked, I might point to, but I wouldn't put anything on it. I mean, I wouldn't put the palaces that you two live in on the line. Separately, I might add separately. Palace.
That's correct.
Yeah, but no, I wouldn't put anything on it. But it's the UConn Invitational, unfortunately, like some people have labeled it.
Again, Vince Ferrara hanging with us here. We've got you to talk Purdue, Tennessee. Jason and I want to ask you a couple of things about that. You were in the arena, obviously, on Friday night in Detroit, the Little Caesars Arena, the LCA. Tennessee got off to much like UConn, a long scoring run, and then Creighton began to chip away, made threes. I think Tennessee ran off 16 straight points. Then Creighton's chipping away. What does it say for this Volunteer team that they were able to show resolve, hang in there, and advance to the Elite Eight? Tell me about what you saw, because you've watched this team all year long.
Well, first off, thank you for dropping the knowledge that the locals call it the LCA, because I've been using that all week, TJ, trying to act like I know.
You sound smarter and more in tune and locked in. We're here for you, babe. We're here to help you out.
I needed the boost, TJ, so thank you very much on that front. But Tennessee ran off. It ended up being an 18-0 run and a 16-point lead. That was the longest run in program history. Of course, UConn made that look like just a couple of trips down the court with their 30-0 run today. But 18-0 was amazing against the Creighton team that is just so tough and disciplined, and they make shots. So you had a 16-point lead, and then Creighton kept chipping away, got it to within 3, and then guess who made 2 threes to twice separate? He made a 3. Dalton Connect made a 3 to extend it to 6. Then Creighton came back, made a 3. Then Connect made another three to separate. And then they were kind of trying to just at arm's length, trying to keep them away. And then it was an and one, a little pick and roll, which Tennessee is so good at. Zakai Ziegler to Tobe Awaka, who completely outplayed Jonas Adu, I might add. He's a backup post. Sometimes they play them together, but more often it's one or the other. Tobe Awaka had maybe his most impactful game with his physicality and the way he has improved offensively and get into foul trouble like he did in the Texas game. And that and one was massive. Came up with another rebound on another missed free throw. Just huge. And he got more minutes, and he was there during the entire 18-0 run, and he was there to close out the ball game for Tennessee as the post, not Jonas Adu. So Tennessee didn't have Santiago Vescovi to start the game.
Yep.
So and he actually was available. The cool thing about these, as you guys know, the cool thing about the NCAA tournament is they mandate a bunch of availability. Players, coaches, there's locker room, mandatory locker room with players and assistant coaches. Then there's the press conference with select players and the coach all there. And they make all that available. And then post game, same thing, press conference, open locker room. So there's just a ton of access. What do you think I've been doing all night while basketball's been on? Is posted all those podcasts of a million interviews I did today. But those kind of things are, what you see from the NCAA tournament that I think is really cool. But it was impressive for Tennessee to answer back and have that resolve and do it without Vescovi. He was my point of the interviews was that Vescovi was there today and in the locker room, and he has a flu. He said it was just horrific what he had to deal with and getting sick, but he was better today. Got a little jog in, was supposed to practice today. Then they're going to check on him tomorrow, see how he feels, and then he wants to try to go. We'll see. And then the question is, does Rick Barnes ease him back in? Because Jemai Mashak was fantastic to start. He was fantastic throughout the entire game with his on-ball pressure, and you're going to need that against Braden Smith at Purdue. So does Rick Barnes keep Jemai Mashak in the starting lineup as that other guard, or does the loyalty win out? If Vescovi's good to go, he's going to throw him in there, and that's what I think will happen, unless there's some limitation to how much he can go. We'll see how that plays out. But very impressive team win for Tennessee when they all play, and it's not Connect and then one or two other guys playing well. When they're all dialed in all phases of the game, this team's tough to beat.
Do you anticipate tomorrow? To me, the matchup is, what does Tennessee do in the post? Do they double team Edey? Do they play him straight up and make him score 35 and contain the other guys? How do you think Rick Barnes is going to play this in the low post?
Jace, just a great question, and I think it's D, all of the above, or E, all of the above, however many things you want to list. And teams have thrown everything at him. Some of the players were talking about that today, whether it's double teams or fronting him or playing him straight up or all, bringing the late double, all kinds of different things the teams will do. The thing that is the biggest determinant of what they end up doing defensively is, where does he catch the ball? If you can't keep him from the low block and he catches it down there, you're done. Then there's no point in sending the double team, and there's no point in fouling him. Jay Billis mentioned it on game day, and it was crazy. Jemai Mashak, I asked him about Edey and defending him and those other guys, and he said, look, sometimes you got to kind of let him go when he's like right at the rim, and don't complicate things by fouling him when he's one, he's going to make the basket. 2, you're going to get in foul trouble. 3, he makes his free throws.
Yes, he does.
So
he's a much improved free throw shooter. It's interesting on your point. They only had 10 free throws in the win over Gonzaga. He shot all 10 of them. He shoots about 10, 12 at least a game. So you're going to foul him some. And you just wonder, are there a couple of quick whistles or not that maybe get him in some trouble or not? Are there quick whistles on Tennessee that damages them? But I think you bring up a great point on, do you deny him some with the big bodies? Where does he catch the ball in the low block, in the kitchen, as I like to say, in the wheelhouse? I think that's a great point, Vince.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it just, that's what my point is it depends on where he gets it. You might be able to send a Zakai Ziegler to swipe at him if he gets it on the high post and he's looking for somebody to pass it to. Gonzaga did that once or twice last night. But if he gets it on the low block, then you play it straight up and you go reset and try to get the points back and don't make things worse. And look, being there courtside, there were times when Gonzaga was really rolling and there weren't stoppages of play. I thought Zach Edey was laboring down the floor a little bit. Now, he's able to get rejuiced. So when he gets his energy back, then it's impressive how he gets up and down the floor. He doesn't look broken. I'm just saying that if you kind of get into an up and down game, that's another way to kind of defend Zach Edey. It's not direct, it's indirect, but run. Try to get out in transition. Make him gas that tank a little bit, get a little bit closer to the E than the F. And then you might be able to get some things done. Maybe he's not as willing to fight down on the low block. And in your point about the physicality as well, that plays into Tennessee's favor, man. Tobe Awaka, he's like Graham Ike last night. He was just slamming bodies and slamming in the Edey. And Tobe Awaka is more than willing to do that. He did a great job against Kalkbrenner last night, the 7-footer. Well, I don't understand why Creighton didn't go to more often, but maybe Tennessee's guards were denying him and not giving them good looks. But Awaka will bang on him, and Tennessee will be physical, especially with those Purdue guards. And I don't know if they've seen physicality like they're going to see from Tennessee. So if the officiating stays generally consistent in letting them play, and they did last game with Creighton, I think that's a positive for Tennessee. And that's one thing that maybe Edey is not comfortable with, and maybe Purdue's guards aren't totally comfortable with. It would be a little bit of a different look, other than a few teams in the Big Ten, the Michigan States, and several others that are grinded out type of teams.
Last point here, and the other part of this matchup that's intriguing to me, this is a rematch from November. They played in Maui, 4-point game. Edey had a good game, not devastating, but Fletcher Lawyer lit up Tennessee for 27 points in Maui. They ended up winning 71-67. That's, to me, you got to keep the Lawyers and the Lance Joneses of the world from not getting to 20 points. If Edey scores his 25 to 30, you can live with that. You can't let the other guys get to 20 plus.
How about Smith and Jones in that game, a combined 10 points and 3 assists, and they still beat Tennessee?
And Lawyer with 27, but Lawyer went for 27.
He was the X factor.
Right. And so, Edey with 23. That game was a couple of things. One, Zakai Ziegler was not 100% yet. In fact, I don't even think he was starting at that point. He was just easing his way back in. Of course, he had the knee injury that kept him from the NCAA tournament last year. And so he didn't have his confidence back. He was playing, but he wasn't fully back or trusting it yet. That was a little while afterwards, later in the year. So they're better there. They're also better in the post. Both Adu and Awaka are much better. In fact, Awaka had a kind of a little bit of a bum angle because he had missed the North Carolina game. He played through that in that game. So Purdue feels like they're better. They were asked about that. But I think Tennessee is better than they were in that game also. So that's one thing. The other thing is Tennessee only got offense basically from 2 players, and Dalton Connect and Jordan Gainey off the bench. That can't happen. You're not going to beat Purdue. You have to be able to make shots against Purdue. They don't have to shoot 55% or anything out of this world, but you got to have at least balanced scoring. You can't just have 2 in double figures. To some degree, you're going to have to try to keep up with them and then get some key defensive stops because Purdue's so efficient. So that's another thing that Tennessee needs to be better at than they were their first time.
And keep in mind, and I know you're not saying this, I'm saying this, that was a game in November. There has been such a ton happen 3.5 months after that. I mean, Clemson beat Alabama at Tuscaloosa, for example, in November. How much does it really mean about a November game? And this is a bigger factor, too. Purdue's going to have the building, for sure. I mean, Tennessee might have 1,000 fans there, but Purdue's going to have basically the rest because West Lafayette's proximity to Detroit. Will it be like a home away from home game for them? Let's see. Let's see if it turns to that. You were in the arena on Friday, but I think it's a different arena on Sunday afternoon. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, Purdue had the most fans by far, but man, during that Tennessee-Creighton game, the orange grew and the volume was clear on who had the biggest fan base. And I've seen Tennessee fans show up all over this country. I would not be surprised with this being the one game if they don't find a way to get some more tickets. They're not going to.
It might be a couple thousand, might be 2,500. Is that realistic?
Yeah, I'm not going to say they're going to outnumber Purdue. I'm not saying that, but I absolutely think you will see more fans, maybe in that 2,500 range, but there'll still be plenty.
What's that, Vince? That about 6-7 hour drive from Knoxville, from Tennessee?
No,
depends on if it's GPS or reality, Jason.
You're probably looking at, because Vince has driven it in the last 48 hours, you're probably looking at about 7 or 8 hours, right?
Okay.
It took me 9. It's 7.5 clear, but a bunch of stops. I was
Traffic,
sleeping, getting coffee. Really wasn't. I was driving at night for a good part of it. I didn't hit any. I think Cincinnati's a bogged down. If you've made that drive headed north on 75, it really was not an issue. It was just, man, I had to stop a lot because I was dead tired, and all that kind of fun stuff. So, if someone.
But you would think some Tennessee fans made the drive on Saturday, broke it up or whatever, made it on Saturday because, again, it's an early game. It's a 2 o'clock Eastern time game. Yeah. I don't think you're trying to drive on Easter Sunday morning to get there if you're the Vol fans. And by the way, we've got it up on the screen. Great time to mention, and Vince put this word out as well. Ticket Smarter mobile app. Get into the game through Ticket Smarter. Best prices on the secondary market. There are going to be some fans selling, obviously, in Detroit and in Dallas tomorrow. And this is the same thing for the Final Four, where Purdue and Tennessee are a step away. For the games in Arizona, use Ticket Smarter. Your purchase is safe, secure, guaranteed. $20 off with the promo code COAST20 with Ticket Smarter. Get in the game. So feel free, Vince, if people are hitting you up, like, how do we get in? How do we get? Tell them to go to Ticket Smarter, Vince. Tell them to go to Ticket Smarter and use that promo code.
Even if it's 9 hours, you're still getting there in plenty of time. A couple hours sleep, you're good to go. So, get those tickets. I'll pass it along.
All right. Great stuff from you. Have a blast. I know you've settled in for the weekend in the Motor City, and it's history on the line here. Tennessee's never been there. Purdue has not been there since 1980, 44 years. Somebody's in Arizona. And I say this to you publicly and live here on our college basketball coast-to-coast platforms. If the Vols make the Final Four, we're going to have to figure out a way to get you to Arizona. I'm already there. We got to figure out how we make that happen. Big step to take on Sunday afternoon. Let's see if the Vols can take that step, and then we'll figure out if we can get Tampa brother from another mother to Arizona. We'll see how it goes.
I appreciate it. Tampa takeover in Phoenix. I'm all for it. And how about if that was to happen, the journey of the SEC?
Yeah.
Incredible regular season, as good as they've had in a long time. Crazy disappointment to start the tournament.
Yep.
And if Tennessee gets there, they're half of the Final Four.
Right.
2 programs that had never been there before. They were
Right.
just relying on Kentucky and Florida again. That would be absolutely wild.
It would be wild. Listen, get some rest. Happy Easter. Easter Bunny might show up there in the Motor City in Detroit for you, my friend. Great stuff, Vince Ferrara, previewing Tennessee-Purdue with us tonight. Thank you.
You guys are the GOATs. Appreciate you.
There goes Vince Ferrara with us. Again, love his insight. We've got a few minutes left here. Again, Tennessee-Purdue from Detroit, and the Midwest Regional is the first game on Sunday. It is almost Easter Sunday in the East here. We're almost talking about later today. The second game is obviously Duke and NC State from Dallas. That one just about 5:15 Eastern time for the South Regional Championship, the ACC rivals. Duke is the most recent team out of the 4 teams tomorrow. They were just in the Final Four 2 years ago. They even have a recent national championship in 2015. Again, Tennessee's never been. Purdue hasn't been in 44 years. How about NC State hasn't been in 41 years? 1983, Jim Valvano, Albuquerque, Sidney Lowe, Derek Wittenberg, Lorenzo
Charles at the gun.
That group against Houston to win the national title. By the way, they beat an SEC team, Georgia, in the national semifinal in 1983, for what it's worth. So NC State and Duke. Let's talk about that for a few seconds. I really believe this is Duke in revenge. Again, I'm partial. I have them in all of my brackets. I have them in the Final Four. I have them in the title game. But I think this is Duke in revenge for having lost in the ACC tournament back 2 weeks ago. Give me a thought on the final piece to the puzzle that'll play out in Dallas.
And Duke has clearly found something from that game. I mean, it was a very disappointing quarterfinal game there. You've heard John Shire and company talk about they've found a resurgent, whether it's a internal energy and camaraderie. You know, Filipowski's playing better. The point guard, is it McCain?
McCain, yes, the freshman.
Yeah, he's playing better. You're getting some good production out of Mitchell. But again, how is Duke going to handle DJ Burns? I know Filipowski's taller, but you know, Burns, as we've talked about, he's a wide load. He is 6'6", 6'7", every bit of 280, 290. How does Duke handle him and his passing ability? And those guys, DJ Horn, those guys are making jump shots.
And they share the ball. They make the extra pass. They're doing a great job with spreading the floor and using the skip pass. Will Duke look to zone them maybe a little to try to throw that off? Jeremy Roach, a big X factor at the end of the Houston game. We didn't talk a lot about him on Friday night, but he made 3 or 4 big buckets, at least 3 big buckets down the stretch of that game. Veteran guard. Let's see for Duke and NC State as the final component to this Final Four. So, Jason, let's wind it down. Recap mode again. UConn, Alabama, 2 spots now taken in the Final Four. Give me another thought. There's people just joining us as we do it live. I know in podcast form and on the TuneIn streaming channel, you've heard the whole show, but there's people probably dipping in that haven't heard the whole show on the video show, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, on the college basketball coast to coast platforms. A thought on both wins, a UConn blowout win and Alabama just absolutely blitzed Clemson with the 3-point shot, especially down the stretch of the game.
Yep, the Connecticut game can be summed up in two points. 30-0 run by UConn, end of the first half, into the second half. I've never seen a 30-0 run in an NCAA tournament game, especially a high-level game at this level, at this stage of the tournament. And Illinois was held to 25 points with 10 minutes left in the game. Defensive intensity by UConn. We know they got good offense players, but the ability for them to defend on the defensive end, Klingon on the perimeter, Castle, and those guys, they've got everything you need. They got inside presence, they got perimeter, they got finesse, and they got some toughness with Danny Hurley. That's my UConn point. In Alabama, they made 16 threes, and we talked about it last night. If they made 10 or 12 plus threes, they're probably going to win. They got Clemson in the track meet in the second half, only 67 points in the first half, 104 total points in the second half. That volume is absolutely a favor to Alabama. They made 16 threes. Mark Sears continues to get it done as the general of that team, the impact player, and Alabama's gotten a guy off the bench every different game. Tonight was Jared Stevenson with 19 huge points off the bench.
Sears finished with 23. Again, he started the game 0 for 6 from the floor, and at one point had then made 7 of his next 8 shots.
Yep.
So he lit it up. Again, Rylan Griffin hit 3 threes in this game. Stevenson hit 5. Amazing job by Alabama to take down a Clemson team that had already beaten Baylor and Arizona, had beaten the 3 seed, had beaten the 2 seed. They didn't get Alabama tonight. So one SEC team is in to play good luck against UConn, who's now won 10 straight NCAA tournament games by 13 points or more. That's never happened before. 9 in a row had never happened before. Now it's up to 10 straight NCAA tournament wins by 13 or more. And the final 2 pieces will come out of Purdue, Tennessee, Duke, NC State. What do you think we're looking at? I gave you what my thought is, that it's Duke
Yep.
I have Purdue in all of my brackets. I know Vince Ferrara doesn't want to hear that. I have Purdue in all of my brackets, but I'm not so sure that Tennessee doesn't get them. I'm kind of hedging there.
Yep.
What is your thought on the two games for Sunday, for Easter Sunday?
I'm with you. I think Duke's going to find a way. I think it's going to be a good game in Dallas. And I think Tennessee and Purdue is going to the wire. They played a 4-point game in Maui. I think with Connect, Tennessee will have some problems with Edey, but the ability of Connect, and if they can make just a few threes, Tennessee, Jordan James, Ziegler, if they can just don't go into a big drought, they're going to be in this game. And I want to see Connect the last 5 minutes of the game. He's going to take the big shots for Tennessee, and he's delivered every single time this year.
One other factor of interest, Vince would be proud I point this out, Rick Barnes in the matchup with Matt Painter has coached in a Elite Eight win and a Final Four spot with Texas as they got in the Final Four back in 2003. Matt Painter has not been to this point to a Final Four. Over on the other bracket, John Shire won a championship as a player, lead assistant for Coach K in 2015 as an assistant when they won the national title again, both times in Indianapolis. Kevin Keats has not been in a Final Four. NC State hasn't been in a Final Four in 41 years. Keats
Another miracle run here. Is it miracle run number 2?
Well, and in the 11 seed, let's say this one more time in the preview mode, the 11 seed has been magic. It was magic for UCLA in the compressed tournament in 2021 all around Indianapolis. They were an 11 seed. They came out of the first 4. Now, again, there was no travel involved, so it was a different tournament, but they were an 11 seed. Loyola of Chicago, very, very much the similar kind of path. They won the Missouri Valley tournament, and they roared in as an 11 seed in the 2018 Final Four in San Antonio. Shaka Smart and VCU came out of the first 4 as an 11 seed, beat the number 1 seed Kansas in the Elite Eight game. So what I'm saying to you is this is not unprecedented, you, the audience, not just to Jason. This is not unprecedented if NC State can do this. It's not unheard of.
I think
amazing that 2 weeks ago, they weren't even in the NIT 2 weeks ago till they did what they did in the ACC tournament to get in the NCAA tournament, Jason, one more time.
I think George Mason was an 11 seed too when they beat Connecticut.
Correct. So, 06.
And one thing we've talked about this on the show throughout. The margin between a 5 and a 12 these days is so slim. It used to be a much wider gap. Now the margin between any 5 and 12 seed is very minimal with all the player change and free agency that's going on. And again, great job by Kevin Keats. Can they do it one more time?
I think it's Duke revenge. I'll stick with my Purdue pick off the brackets, but it would not surprise me if Tennessee ends up getting that game, and then we got 2 SEC teams in the Final Four.
You might be in line for a payday if Duke can win 2 more games here. You might be in line for a nice little payday.
Some brackets will be falling my way if that is the case. One thing is for sure, whatever happens on Easter Sunday, happy Easter, everybody. It's now across midnight in the East. Whatever happens Easter Sunday, Jason and I are back on Sunday night to recap the final 2 pieces to the Final Four. Is it Duke or NC State? Is it Purdue or Tennessee? They'll join Connecticut and Alabama, the winners, in the desert, in the Arizona desert. How about Alabama winning in Spokane, staying out west, playing in LA? They're going to come back home briefly after this win on Saturday night and then return to the desert. Why not? Alabama football, by the way, got a title in the desert against Clemson in the college football playoff championship game in that very same State Farm Stadium, where they're now going to play in the basketball Final Four. Just file that away to go against Godzilla, UConn, coming up. So Alabama, UConn there. We'll find out the other 2 pieces. We'll come back and recap it on Sunday Night Live on the College Basketball Coast to Coast platforms. And again, find us on podcast under College Basketball Coast to Coast. The streaming TuneIn channel is College Basketball Coast to Coast on the TuneIn app. Hear it free to hear anytime. Jason, great stuff tonight. Final thought from you.
I got to give a shout out to all my peeps. I used to live in Birmingham for many, many years. Big Alabama town. I got to give a Roll Tide to all my Alabama people.
And it's Roll Tide basketball. Shout out to Chris Stewart, the play-by-play voice, our mutual friend. Love it for him.
Yep.
And then let's see if Vince and the Tennessee Vol Network, Bob Kessling on the call on the Vol Network to see if they can get it done and what happens. How about Gary Hahn who is the play-by-play voice of the NC State Wolfpack for over 30 years. He's in his final year. He's already announced his retirement. Can they get to the Final Four? Can they upset Duke and get to the Final Four? We're going to find out on all these fronts. Jason, great job. Thank you, my friend. Get some rest. We'll reload on Easter Sunday night.
Happy Easter, everybody.
There you go. Thanks to Adam Zagoria, our insider from NJ.com and the Zags blog. He was there courtside for UConn's demolition of Illinois. Vince Ferrara previewing Tennessee and Purdue as well from 99.1 FM, the Sports Animal, and the Vol Network in Knoxville. We appreciate you subscribing here, finding us, following us, checking us out on the video platforms. Find the podcast again, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify. TuneIn streaming live channel will be on that channel live from the Final Four coming up this coming week. Next weekend in Arizona. Let's see what happens. It's Purdue and Tennessee up first from Detroit. It is Duke and NC State from Dallas. Those are the final two pieces to the 68-team field, to the puzzle for the Final Four. Let's see what shakes out. We're back tomorrow night. I'm TJ Rives for Jason Powers. Thank you for being with us on college basketball coast to coast and our Saturday night Elite 8 recap. Happy Easter, everybody.